Day? Well, ding ding, it's on. It's all day today. Now, I'm going to remind y'all something that I learned long ago. If you don't start drinking early in the morning, you can't drink all day. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Faces of Women in the Blues panel. I'm honored to introduce our moderator. And she's a sweetheart too. She received a bachelor's in education from Aarhus University in Denmark, where she grew up. While she was in the throes of her studies at university, this business manager, she started her own advertising sales agency. In 1990, she met and fell in love with blues icon Walter Trout.
Oh, that's right.
She then took over management of Walter's career in 1992. She continues to serve as the head of Walter Trout Management and CEO of their corporation, Fishnet Productions Incorporated.
After it's done, don't worry about any of this.
This determined businesswoman finished her PhD dissertation in 2015 and did an in-depth study of current blues fans and what they get out of the music and the craft. And earlier this year, she released the findings from that study in her new book called The Blues, Why It Still Hurts So Good, with all the proceeds going to the Blues Foundation's Heart Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm, Glenda, welcome to Dr. Marie B. Trout.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see so many daring early birds out here. I know you have a steep program to go through. Women in blues and the face of blues today. I have to say, for many of us, the face of the blues today is often a guy, a man with a guitar, right? That's what we think of, that's what we often see. That's what typically is booked at festivals and concert halls, and once in a while, a woman pops in and gets a chance to show what she can do. It's not always been like that. In the 20s, the blues queens ruled, and it was a time of lots of transformation and craziness, and these women defined the genre. So women really, in many ways, started all this. And then something happened, and they kind of, became less prominent. And it's not just on this side of the stage that women are a little less prominent, or a lot less prominent. It's also in the audiences. The study I did about blues fans, it was 7 out of every 10 who responded to the survey was a man. In social media sites that I have access to for blues artists, it's mainly men as well. But I have a feeling this is changing, slowly but surely. Because, well, right here, right now, is one of those examples of that, because the 2007 Big Blues Bender has actually more women than men in attendance. Give yourself a hand. So there's a hopeful trend and movement in this, and I think having the conversation about what women bring to the blues is an important conversation to have, because we're creatures of habit. And if we think of blues as a guy with a guitar or a guy, mainly, we miss out on some experiences. We miss out on some power, frankly. We miss out on something that hurts that which ails us inside. Because women have a way of doing things that are unique. Now, I'm going to introduce the panel here. I want to just let you know we're going to go for about an hour, and after this we will have the all-women jam. I hope you'll stick around for that. KVG and the girls will lead it, yep. And some of the women will come out, take turns, and it'll be a rocking good time, and we'll exemplify some of what we're talking about here today. I'm going to start introducing the ladies and take my seat here. I would like to first introduce you to Miss Dawn Tyler Watson. Now, I watched Dawn and her band win the International Blues Challenge in 2017, earlier this year. And I can tell you, you are in for a treat to be in her presence. She had just recovered from open heart surgery 3 months earlier, and she still stole the show. She's been called the Queen of the Blues in Montreal, and she lives in Canada but is born in England. She has released 4 albums and won scores of awards, including 3 Canadian Maple Blues Awards, 9 Quebec Lees Blues Awards, a Screaming Jay Hawkins Award for Best Live Performance, and a Trophée France Blues for Female International Artist of the Year. Again, Dawn Tyler. Next on our panel, I would like to introduce Teresa James. Teresa is originally from Houston, Texas, but she's made her career and lived for many years in Los Angeles, where she records prolifically with her band of top session and touring musicians, including her husband, the Rhythm Tramps. Teresa has released 9 CDs, and her work has been nominated by the Blues Foundation. 2 of her albums were voted as Best Blues CD at the Independent Music Awards. She's recorded and performed with scores of musicians, too many to mention, but such names as Levon Helms, Delbert McClinton, Eric Burden, Tommy Castro, Walter Trout, and many, many more. She and her band were also featured in the Disney movie and soundtrack for Holes, just a little FYI. Teresa James. Next, I'd like to introduce you to the one, the only, Ann Harris. Ann is Chicago-based and a very, very accomplished violinist, fiddle player, singer-songwriter, and has made 5 indie studio albums and played all over the U.S. and abroad. Ann is a musical powerhouse and has worked with scores of musicians, including stints with Jefferson Starship. Personally, I experienced her collaboration with the one and only Otis Taylor, trance blues innovator Otis Taylor, at the Blues Cruise. And I agree with a quote that Julie Jenkins has come up with, which is, "The beauty of Ann's ability to play the violin while dancing as gracefully as a swan and as powerfully as a shaman is indeed something to experience." And who introduced tonight? Last but not least, the one and only Sari Shore. Sari is a New York singer and songwriter who initially gained prominence throughout the blues world, touring with Joe Louis Walker. She's an inductee of the New York Blues Hall of Fame, and in 2016, Sari kicked off a worldwide tour at New York's Carnegie Hall, performing at the Lead Belly Fest. Yeah, she mixes her passion for music with a commitment to social responsibility. She has devoted her talent and energies to music projects on a grand scale for humanitarian causes, including her own nonprofit called Matters. Sari's current album is appropriately called A Force of Nature. And if you see her play and sing, you will know why. And she is currently nominated for a host of independent blues awards. Now, before we started, I asked some blender people, big blues blender people on Facebook to come up with some questions. And is Darla in the room to ask a question? Darla, John will get your mic, and you can kick us off with the first question.
Thank you for having us ask these questions. And good morning, Blues family. And good morning, lovely ladies. And thank you so much for what you bring for us and your talents to the world. And we love women in the blues. But my question is, I'm a frustrated singer, or I say I'm a closet singer, and I've always had stage fright. And I'm wondering what you do before you get on stage to eliminate that little surge of, oh my God, oh, what am I going to do? But I'm really excited that you're here. And thank you for letting me ask my question.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but what I always try to do, especially, I mean, I don't get so nervous anymore, but sometimes, like, especially if you're going to be a guest and you're waiting and you're just thinking about it, what I try to do is just get really still, somewhere quiet, and just breathe really slowly a few times, you know, just kind of like a Zen sort of, you know, just, I just did it back there.
Thanks for the great question. What really helps me is when I remind myself that I'm a storyteller. That's it. And my job is to be as transparent in the process of relaying that story to the audience as possible, and that it's sharing a gift, and there's no judgment when you're giving a gift.
Thank you for the question. That's something that I really work with young singers. I teach, and I do deal with that a lot. And all excellent suggestions. And I also believe, yeah, you're a messenger for that song. When somebody, if you think it's all about you, all eyes are on you. I am the star. I am the one that has to make this show. If you come at a show as a community and that you're a part of something and you're creating something together with the other musicians on stage, the other people on stage, and you're serving the music, then I find that I don't become so self-conscious. That's one thing. The second thing is we never, ever have any control over what anybody thinks of us. So get over that about, oh, if I wear this, they're going to think that, and if I sing that, and I made that mistake, and oh my God, they're going to, it becomes a real, like, black hole of thought that will suck you into that place. And as soon as you're there, you're not in the present moment, and you can't serve the music. So that's something I really believe in, and just trying to get over yourself, enjoy it, be a channel for the fun of it, the joy of it, being on stage in community with other people.
Great question, and I do kind of the same combination of things actually. I take a deep breath and I pray to the goddess of rock that that I may serve the music and the audience to the highest of my ability, because I think, like many women, I'm usually better and more readily available to help other people than I am myself. I would put myself out. I'm a mom, so I'm used to, like, take care of the, put out the fires first and then deal with your own stuff. And so I always open myself to my best ability to serve the music, to serve my little role in it and my small place in that. And then I'm not thinking about myself, I'm really thinking about what is the bigger picture. Even if all I'm going to do is play one note the entire song, I want that to be the thing that really helps everyone I'm playing with lift their vibrations. So I try to get out of my own head.
So is there something, I wonder if there's something about the blues that makes this process of authenticity and serving and being in the moment and stepping back and looking at what's out there, how to connect, that makes this an easier process than, let's say, if it was a staged show of some sort.
I guess you mean the element of we don't know what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
As opposed to here's the script. I think that that just is the practice of being completely engaged in the moment and being exactly where you are and not projecting yourself ahead of yourself or thinking about whatever mistake you just made because you are not defined by your mistakes. They can be a guide for you, but you're not defined by those. You have to let everything go and be completely present in order to improvise. I mean, that's what we're talking about, improvisation. Really.
I think that's the best way to find your own integrity and your own inner voice when you are fully committed to being in the moment and you don't let past or future expectations come in and cloud your judgment and sort of cloud your performance. When you are vested completely in the moment, there's a sense of freedom and a relief, and then there's no fear. And I think fear is the thing that really prevents creativity and the flow of all the good creative ideas that we have. So it really is that commitment to being in the present.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is when the cool thing about blues is that there's not a lot that you have to worry about in terms of, oh, that's right, it goes to this chord or this rhythm changes or whatever. You can really just let the music kind of flow through you, and if you clear your mind and like you said, just let it go and be in the moment. The cool part of the blues is that you can just eat any instrument, but singers, of course, I'm a singer, so that's where I go. But if you really let go, the music will take you where it wants to go, and your mind is not even engaged, and that's where the pure feeling comes from, and the soulfulness that I think that people relate to. It's because it's all it just kind of goes up into the general consciousness or something. I don't get too deep, but you know what I'm saying.
I agree with that. You brought up the point about being in the creative in the moment and not in the rational side of the brain that's analyzing everything. Creativity comes from it's the left side of the brain, right? So that's the other thing. If we can get out of that the inner critic, I call it, and just get into the creativeness, the joy, channeling it, then that's definitely where the magic happens, and we're just again serving a greater purpose. It's really, somebody mentioned fear, and when you talk about stage fright, the word fear. One thing I try to do, do we get nervous? Yeah, we still get nervous. I stay busy as possible. I'm often rushing to get to a gig, and I think that's the way I deal with all that that energy. But instead of saying, oh, I'm so scared, I'm afraid, I'm nervous, I say I'm excited. I turn it into excitement. What's going to happen? This is an adventure. Oh my gosh, I'm out of so much control. Last night coming down, we played with the Bender Brass. This is not my band that we played with, and we're not all here. So, my band isn't here, so I'm sitting in with a bunch of guys. Some of them I've just met, and we had 2 hours of rehearsal to go through all this original music, and it's new for them, and it's new for me to work with them, and all these elements that are completely out of my control. This is an adventure. What's going to happen? Wow. And knowing I have no control, I could just do my best and let the universe do the rest.
And so often that's when the magic happens. It's when you walk into a situation where you don't know anybody and they're just saying, okay, do this, and then all of a sudden the beat is not quite what you expected, but it's kind of cool, and then you start singing it in a different way than you normally do, and then the horns come in and you're like, oh, okay, oh, cool. So then I can go here or I can do that, and then that's just all this instant creativity happens. And blues is great for that because the format is so basic.
And one of the things blues fans talked to me about when I was doing my research was also that when that happens on stage, they pick up on it. It's felt throughout. So it becomes a communal experience, and that improvisation and that fearlessness that we generate together kind of lift us out of that. And that's what fans told me they felt as well, and that really worked for them as well. I'm going to change the subject just slightly and ask a question about, we have a culture right now that is extremely polarized. There's a lot of division among people. If you look at what's going on in our world right now, what do you think is the most important contribution that the blues can give in order to counter some of those tendencies? And here, particularly, of course, women in blues.
Well, I think that music, in general, is, to quote a cliche, it is a universal language, and that is, it transcends words, and it goes straight to the heart. And I personally feel that this is a very intense time to be on planet Earth. I guess any time can be defined by intensity of different levels, but it feels particularly intense, and we know a lot of people right now facing catastrophe, climatic change, and ultimately we have to love and work through our hearts and connect with other hearts. And our capacity to love is the one thing that transcends all of our perceived differences. And so music is an incredible channel for opening our hearts and for people coming together in community and connecting with love and joy and absolutely no biases. So that's my feeling about the subject.
I think that the blues, as an art form, will always remind us, that for those of us who know, I think this is why the blues has such a power to be able to reach people. I think it's almost magical because of what it comes out of, because it comes out of way back to Africa, mixed with, the Western music, that this comes up from the spirituals, from the Negro spirituals, from the slaves. It comes up. This blues music has its roots very, very deep in Mother Earth. And energetically, whether you know the history of the blues or not, what the fans, something I was just saying upstairs, blues fans, and it's so vibrant here that people come from all over the world to celebrate, to connect, to network, and to just come together. Thank you for that blues family thing. This is really, we're a blues family. And blues fans, you guys are so passionate about this music that despite whether you know the history or not, there is a connection there. And all those differences that we, judge economic or political or racial or sexual orientation, all that stuff doesn't matter. We connect on that level. And I think that, so the blues coming up from the tradition that it comes to, knowing that it has overcome so much and been a springboard for so much. The blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll, right? So every single kind of music today, including hip hop, including country, including all that stuff, comes out of the blues. It is a powerful pot, a mixing pot. So I think that definitely affects and connects us, and it doesn't matter. And I think when we have that connecting thing, that heart thing that we're all connected by, then we forget about all those judgments. And as I believe as a woman, that is our nature, is to bring forth life and love and connect with people. And so that we're able to do that in this setting, to come together so well is like just a testament to the power of the music.
I completely agree. I think what makes blues so extraordinary is it really is the story of the human experience. It's the story of us, who we are. And as humans, we have an innate passion and capacity to connect and love each other, and not just connect with those of us who look similar or who think in a similar way. Blues helps us transcend this and remind us that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience. And the beauty and simplicity of blues allows us to channel the power and intention of the music right to our heart. As Anne said earlier, it's not a cognitive process. It hits us right here and we feel it. And because it's so accessible, it helps remind us that we are all united in this fascinating journey that we share together.
It's true, and what you were talking about before was the fact that all the differences, the parity, the political and all the things that are dividing us right now are all mental things. They're all thought-driven. But music, and especially blues music, is more, it's more physical. It's more of a, it always struck me that, why shuffles are always so popular. It's like, you ever notice, you start a shuffle and the dance floor fills up. You can play anything else, but it's like a heartbeat. That kind of thing. And I think that when people get into music, and especially blues, because it is so elemental, it takes over your body, and your mind stops thinking about what it chews on all the time about politics or whatever it is that you're worried about, and everyone relaxes and relates with the beat.
So, continuing a little bit on the woman track, just a little background, women in America couldn't vote until 1920. African American women could not vote until the 1960s. Banks could refuse to issue credit cards to women without their husband's signature up until 1973. It wasn't until 1973 either that women could serve on juries in all 50 states. Yale and Princeton did not accept female students until 1969, and Harvard did not admit women until 1977. Yeah. You think about that. I mean, it's very recent history that women were really marginalized and discriminated against, and it was not even really thought about. And it has, I think, many times gone under the surface of our wanting to be equal and wanting to have equality, but we don't really look at maybe how recent it was, that there still was perceptions that were very different. Now, my question to you is, the story of women as being discriminated against obviously resonates with also the story of other marginalized and discriminated against peoples, African Americans, people of color, Jews. How does this knowledge of this connection inform your music today?
Well,
Question.
it's as a female artist in the blues and as a songwriter, I feel an immense responsibility. I wasn't going to say pressure. There is pressure invested in it as well, but it is a responsibility to try to give voice to subjects from a female perspective, because that does create a more balanced perception of what life is on both female and male side, because we are completely intertwined, and our female experience is completely connected to the male experience and vice versa. So as a songwriter, I try to approach difficult subjects to talk about, like domestic violence, prejudice. There's a lot of freedom issues running through my material. Male prostitution as well. I think that's an important subject, don't you, ladies? But it's important that women find our voice and have the courage to tackle these subjects, to give a perspective that might not be otherwise perceived as easily. And these things through song can become a more open conversation. And once people start talking about things, then that's a step towards progress and greater and deeper understanding. And that's how we build meaningful relationships with each other.
That's really cool. It's interesting though to me that I've done a little bit of research on the beginnings of blues and the beginnings of roots music, and ironically, the first record that was out in 1920, the best-selling first record that was actually ever called the blues was a black woman named Mamie Smith, sold over 1 million copies the first year. Ray's records were the first records that ever really sold. I mean, that's what they call them. Sorry, I didn't make that up. Rights records. And black women were the hugest sellers way back in the beginning of records. So it is really ironic that women's music and people of color, I mean, obviously, that was what helped, I think, what helped break those race barriers was music, because everyone enjoyed soul music, you know, blues music. But I don't think about so much about being a woman in the world, but I think that a woman's perspective reaches down just a little bit deeper for some reason. I don't know if it's because women rule the world. Because we raised all you guys, you know, women, what the heck? Very primordial.
I think that does have a lot to do with it, because all males came through a woman's body, through our experience, and that whole we are the creators, with the co-creators, let's say, of life. So we had this discussion briefly yesterday about what's the solution to all this discord and disharmony and all the violence and all the turmoil in the world. And I personally believe it will come through the power and the presence and the awareness, the writing of the songs, the putting it out there, the having the discussions. It will come from the women, the solution and the peace. That's my belief.
I don't even know what I would add to that. They're so eloquent and beautiful. Everything you just stated. I mean, personally, I sort of consider my presence as an artist, woman of color, instrumentalist, sort of an act of defiance in a way, because the odds are kind of stacked against us. And I think just by showing up and giving of myself, it can be a visually powerful thing to see a woman on stage, especially in a male-dominated field. And just, I know the feeling I get when I witness women in their power doing amazing things. These women and other women I know, or women I might see on at other concerts or shows or on television or in the movie. Just the presence is incredible, and I know I've had a lot of young girls over the years just flip out, and young women of color that have never seen a woman play a black woman play violin before. So I try to just keep open to the fact that just showing up and just giving everything I have, and with all of the joy that I feel, can hopefully be a positive influence on a young person. And that's how things change. That's how perceptions change, and that's how barriers get broken, because people go, I never considered that, I never saw that before, and it's possible, so.
I would like to share a private moment we had yesterday. What you said about just showing up, that takes so much courage. Because as a white woman, as the challenges that I face just being a woman are nothing compared to the challenges women of color have to face. And they don't have the equal platform that I have as a white woman to express my dissatisfaction with the state of the world and the injustice. An African American woman can't have this conversation in the same tone and anger and frustration that a white woman can. And it's terribly unjust, and I have so much respect for any woman of color who's standing up to pursue her dreams and fight against the odds. We stand with you.
Yes, it's quite a moment. Thank you. If we look at the music business as a whole, there are a lot of guys in it as well. I work in it as a manager of Walter's career, and it's a guys' club out there. Promoters, agents, publicists, the people we work with are many times men. I'm wondering if you could share if there would be a change in how you would experience your career if there were more women also working in blues leadership or in music leadership, in the executive side of things, in pulling the strings, festival buyers, that sort of thing. Would that change things? Do we need to empower each other also to get involved in that level?
I think yes. Short answer.
Did I just give my own answer? I think I did. But it's difficult, because it takes guts, actually, to go into this men's club sometimes and show up as a woman and be there and talk business, because we sound different. We have different ways of addressing issues, maybe. And when you walk into the boys' club and you're sitting around, it's almost like a cigar lounge. It's a little bit difficult. And I think also, I guess that's just my own little bleep here. If you are inspired to work in the music business, if you're inspired to help out, if you're inspired to step up in blues societies, blues foundation, anywhere where there's some decisions being made and there's bands being booked, even as volunteers, get in there. We need you out there. Okay. I wonder if there are any other questions from the audience. People would like to.
Easy question. As women, as women in the blues, I'm curious personally, were you all born and raised in it, or did you come to it later?
Could you stand up, please? I have no idea where that voice is coming from. Oh, right there.
Do I need to stand up?
Sorry. So, how were we raised? How what did we listen to as kids? And that, yeah, I was just raised with a very passionate set of parents that loved all kinds of music. My dad's record collection was kind of defined our childhood, and it was everything from blues to jazz to classical to musical theater to rock and roll, avant-garde stuff. I mean, it was all over the place. So I had a very broad palette musically as a child. It was a really fertile soil for me, and I think the impact of that is that my foundation is, my roots kind of spread really deep. It wasn't a singular tradition in my household. So I hear blues in all kinds of music. I love Celtic music, and I hear blues music and Celtic music. The Irish experience, if there ever was a country that has the blues. I mean, the blues for me isn't, obviously it's our music as Americans. This is our genre, but the feeling of it is a universal human feeling that connects in my ears to many genres, including classical music. There are pieces that I listen to. Beethoven had the blues, and he didn't know it. Indian music, he probably knew it. So anyway, that was my upbringing. What was your?
Well, coming from New York City, there was tremendous jazz influence. And when I started into jazz, I wanted to find out who were the influences of the great singers that I loved. And that's how I made my way to the classic female blues singers. And for the first time in my life, I found a home for my voice. I could really be comfortable in my own skin for the very first time, because before that I was always trying to make my voice smaller. And I was telling Marie yesterday, I had done several recording sessions laying on my back in a recording studio to try to diminish the power of my voice and my range. And then but it takes a long time to become more comfortable with who you are and accepting of all the things that make each one of us so unique. And it's all those beautiful imperfections that really allow us to be ourselves. And once I was able to embrace that and be comfortable enough with it, I was straight ahead right into blues.
Yeah, I think that it's important as an artist, and because we're all of a certain, I don't think there's any 20-somethings up here, although we all look pretty good. But, you know, we have a certain maturity and a certain amount of time in this business doing this thing. We have a history behind us finding our voice. I love what you said, sorry, and it actually touched me that it's almost like looking at yourself and saying, I hate my nose, I hate my nose, I hate my nose. And finally realizing it's your nose that makes you, unique. And with lying on the back singing, and it just saddened me to think you took that huge, powerful voice, trying to fit it into what we expect, we think society or what our producers or what the industry is looking for. It's the same thing as body image. It's the same thing as anything else, changing your style to sell your music. I really believe in being a success in the broader terms, not in financial terms or in MTV terms, but is truly just becoming yourself, recovering yourself, discovering yourself, unearthing yourself, and becoming fully accepting of your voice, of who you are on stage, of what you have to say, and truly standing by yourself in your integrity, in your lyric writing, in your performance. And that's the thing that we're talking about before that connects us, like the heart to the heart. I'm a person who believes we're all little godlings, truly. We're all parts of a divine, just my personal belief. And that music, especially blues music, is that universal thing that connects us, that we stop looking at the almighty I and we think of the we, that is powerful. So I also believe that we mimic so many of our heroes in the beginning. I almost hate to say it, but it's funny. I mean, one of my heroes was Anne Murray, like growing up, it's Canadian. I don't know if you guys know. I was like 12 and 13 and singing, beneath the snowy mountain, cold and clean, and John Denver, and I was a real country inspired for, I don't know why my parents weren't, but I loved all that stuff. Ellen Reddy and it's so funny, but I could mimic anyone. It's only when I started to truly allow my own voice to come forward that I felt, that I was coming into my own, and that I started to be a success, and that people connected and responded to that, and which gives me permission to become more and more myself, to allow myself to become more unearthed and more authentic and more transparent on stage. And I personally, one of my challenges and one of my goals is to be the same person on stage as I am off. Some people deal with it a different way. I have a persona on stage, and then I'm myself when I'm off stage. But for me, I truly integrating myself is to become the same person on stage and off stage, to be as authentic as possible. That's a true journey.
That's true. That's so true. But there's nothing wrong with listening to Anne Murray and trying to. I grew up in Texas, and my dad is the hugest music fan. He has, even now, he's 94, and he's got an iTunes collection that's just unbelievable. He lives behind me in a little guest house, and I'm always up there, and he'll be playing it, and I'll be getting him lunch or something, and I'm thinking, just a minute, and I'll go over to his iTunes and send that to myself. Okay, that's a cool tune, But I grew up listening to so many different kinds of music. And in my career, actually, I've done everything. I consider myself sort of a blue-collar musician, because I've always made my living, and obviously I'm not famous and making tons of money, so someone goes, hey, can you do this, can you do that, But I just remember starting out in my 20s, listening to every singer. Every time I heard of a new singer or heard anything, I would listen to it and think, wow, that's cool. Now how did she do that, and can I do that? And I would try to imitate some of the, like Ema Sumac and Ezra Mohawk and Patti Smith or Tammy Wynette or whoever, and in trying to imitate those people, I found more of my voice You know what I mean? It's like, and it just built more tools into my toolbox for me to draw on. And I think I'll, just put that little thing there or whatever. But the point of it, of singing the blues is, I didn't come to the blues until a little bit later, but it was when I heard Big Mama sing Hound Dog. That was really what did it for me. That beat is so cool, and that voice, and I just thought, yeah, that's who I want to be. I want to be her. But the blues, I think, allows you to draw from every inspiration because it does come from every kind of music. It was the beginning of everything. In fact, I just thought it was really funny because, from the very, like you said, it started with Negro spirituals and working in the fields and the call and response stuff. But then the country guys started, like Jimmy Rogers started trying to do that, and then he brought in like this cool sort of yodely, really country thing. But Howlin' Wolf one time in an interview said he came up with his thing because he was trying to imitate Jimmy Rogers. And he couldn't yodel, so he came up with his thing, I mean, it just is all such a big net that incorporates, to me, everything. And the more you listen, the more you bring to it, and the blues just sort of distills it down to just the beat and the soul and the heart. So I've talked a really long time.
I have to say that for me, and I'm sure for many of you, I owe you all a big thank you, because watching you find that authenticity on stage is such a powerful expression of femininity, of womanhood, where it comes from a place of, I'm finding this within myself and I'm going to express this. I'm not listening to what the advertisements tell me I should look like. I'm not listening to what our culture's messages about who I am should be or whatever. But really, you are expressing goddessness and femininity and womanhood in such a way that it helps me be more myself as well. Would you agree with that? So, family and touring. Two of you have families. If you're willing to talk about it a little bit, I feel a little strange asking the question because this is a question that really probably wouldn't come up if it was a panel of men. Right? But as you know, as women, we shuffle a lot of things, and maybe the two of you who have kids would just say a few words about what you have learned about how to handle this touring existence.
I remember when I was breastfeeding, my daughter was she was under a year old. She was probably around 8 months or something, and I had just started getting back into the game. I live in Chicago, that's where I'm based, and I was called to do a session, and it was a little bit of a drive, and I had to pump out and get my husband to feed her milk, and then but I was really upset when I arrived at the session because I didn't get to nurse her before putting her down to bed, and that was something that was really important to me at the time. And there was an amazing woman, a friend of mine, a singer-songwriter in Chicago who sang backups on so many records that you all probably have, and she's never been a famous person, but she's hugely successful in the industry. She was on this session. She's a mother of two. And my little girl was 8 months, and her girls were getting ready to go to college, and she saw me all, frazzled, and I'm happy to be here, but I couldn't put my baby to bed, and she took my hands, and she looked in my eyes, and she said, "Do you know that what you are doing with your life, and you pursuing your passion, is the greatest gift you can give your girl?" And it's so important for her to see her mother doing what she has to do to express her heart and soul. And I still go back to that conversation at times when I'm getting ready to leave, and I'm making final lunches, and I get into this very bad rock mom space. I have a joke with Deanna Bogart about that, and I do want to, this is a little offshoot I want to quickly mention, because we are talking about goddesses in music. You all know Deanna. She's an amazing woman, dear friend of mine, and a mentor of mine, and you're probably all aware now of her situation, that she was robbed of all of her possessions when she arrived on her birthday the other day here in Vegas. And so just to let you know, there is a GoFundMe fund for her online. You can easily find on Facebook. I just want to put that out there because she's another rock mom on the team. Anyway, to sum it up, that's something I come back to. I have to give my daughter the best of who I am, and part of who I am is an artist, a performer, a musician. I wouldn't be complete if I were to not do that. And so I want to give her the best person and example that I can. So that's how I deal with this.
Yeah, my situation's a little different because my husband and I both perform together, and we've had a band together for, many, I won't say how many, but many years. And when we had our daughter, it was kind of a thing because we were just starting to build, and we made the conscious choice for him to take road gigs with other people, and for me to stay home and work and do recording sessions. And we never stopped making our living playing music, but we made the decision not to go out and tour. We weren't touring at the level where we could bring a nanny and get an extra room and have trust me, we were definitely not touring at that level. And it would have been weird. I never took my kids to gigs because first of all, I'm a mom, and the few times that I did bring kids to like festivals or big concerts, I found myself on stage the whole time singing, going, okay, where is he? Okay, I don't see him. Where are they? What are they doing? It was just way too distracting. And it set us back many years by not touring, because touring is how you get your name out there. Touring is how you sell records. Touring is everything. That's how people find you. But it was really important to us that we raise our kids, and it was really interesting because every now and then I would go out on a road gig and my husband would stay home, or he'd go out and I'd stay home, or every now and then, we would do a few things. Maybe, every now and then we would go out together and get the grandparents to come and stay with the kids. But every night when I would tuck the kids in when they were little, I would say, okay, now tomorrow I have a session in the morning, okay, and Daddy's going to stay home, and then he's got to go do a session, so we're going to, we'll meet. We used to meet halfway and hand off the car seat, and then we'd go, but I always made a point of saying, but don't forget, I get to work tomorrow, so I won't be home. It was never, I have to work. It was always, I get to work. And that kind of, I guess we did fine. Our kids are grown now, but we have a dancer who married a drummer, a Texas drummer. I'm like, I raised you better than that. But he's a great drummer and he's a great guy. And our son, we were laughing, what if he was a bad drummer? Oh my God, it's so horrible. Don't you like him? Well, no, yeah, he's a good guy. And our son is now a musician. So we have a dancer and a musician, and actually, our son just got a gig playing bass with our son-in-law's band. So he's on the road right now with them. But I think it was good because we never stopped what we were doing. And we moved out to the suburbs of Los Angeles, and I watched all the families that we came into contact with, because with being home, it was great. I was PTA, I was room mom, I got to do a lot of stuff, and I saw a lot of other families, and they changed their life. When they had kids, it was like, okay, now we're parents, and we're only doing this, And our house was always crazy. It was always really interesting, weird people coming in and out, and they were in different, But our kids are so accepting of other people, and they can mix and mingle and talk to anybody. They're very centered, and I'm really proud of the fact that they both found something that they're passionate about, and we're not afraid to pursue it, because it is scary. It's really scary, but they have confidence, and I think a lot of that is because they saw us doing what we were doing, And so we came late to the blues touring world. Well, there you have it. You know, we're here now, so it is kind of funny though, because almost as soon as my son moved out, my dad moved in. So it's
I have pit bull triplet girls, and they came on tour with me once. And the first large festival we did, they were on the side of the stage, and the three of them didn't stop barking the whole time in the wrong key. So that was the last time.
Well, maybe the two of you who don't have kids, we need to wrap it up, but just real quick, can talk about how, even though you don't have human children of your own, how you still involve and seek to inspire young people to do what you do. I mean, because I know that's part of both of your trajectory.
Well, one of my other passions besides music is doing humanitarian work and working with children in Haiti and India. So for me, those are my adopted children, and it gives me a real sense of purpose. But in a perfect world, I would have had children, but we don't exist in a perfect world, and there's no perfect solutions. So it was a trade-off for me, and it was a choice that I made very early on, that I wanted to pursue music, and I knew that I would dedicate my life to that, and hopefully through music I would have a platform to do other things, and that dream is now coming true.
For me, I truly believe that, I did not do the mother thing in this lifetime. I think that somewhere along in another lifetime perhaps, but personally I'm just too busy with my own inner child. She just constantly keeps me busy and distracted, and I figure that's enough management. Plus I have a little dog, a little 7.5er named Molly, and some of you may see her on stage with me in various festivals. She stays side stage as well, and somewhere along the last song she'll come out on stage. But for me, I've also done a lot of volunteer work with teens. I'm that's something that's very close to me, because I had quite a troubled teenhood, and was a bit of a delinquent, and it's my way of repairing that karma, or of taking my experience and coming through that to be able to give it back to so many of the youth today, coming up in this world that seems so hopeless, that seems so dark sometimes. I think it's important to have use your art and your pursuance of your dream, as you mentioned, as a role model, as a light, as something, however way the universe sees fit, actually. But I do believe I love the Blues in Schools programs. I think it's so important. I think it's, if you look around the room, God bless each and every one of you, but there's not a lot of 20-somethings blues fans. We're actually getting older in our age group, so it's so important that we share this music with young people, and that you bring your families, bring your kids, your nieces, your nephews, your grandkids to concerts, to festivals. Bring out the youth, because it's sad, but I feel that the fan base is a much older crowd, and I just think it's so important to keep this music going, to keep the music in schools, the Blues in Schools programs. Please support them in your community and stuff.
All right, we're out of time. I can't think of a better note to end this debate on, or this discussion on. I want to thank all of you for coming out, and I want to particularly, from the bottom of my heart, thank these four ladies who shared so beautifully of themselves and their stories and their hearts and their amazing spirits. So please give them a warm thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie.
Now we clear the stage, and Katie G and the girls, and some of these women will come out again and do it all in music. See you later.